Hello，大家好，我是老唐。今天是加拿大萨肯时间，2023年6月22号。每天阅读10分钟，好习惯养成。今天是我们继续阅读的第146天，进入阅读《Grow Rich with Peace of Mind》这本书的第6章，The Blessed Art of Sharing Your Riches. Wealth that is shared creates more wealth, and you can share many forms of wealth besides money. These millionaires themselves point out that anyone can become a billionaire because today's wealth is so widespread and they give rise to so many opportunities. When you share in your own home, you create a basic harmony which adds to your success and peace of mind in everything you do. Start now to share what you have, and when you have plenty of money, you will share your money more wisely and with more greater benefit. You're going to make money. If you do not allow negative points of view to trip you up, you will march straight forward on the road to riches. Yes, you're going to make money in solid sums, money that comes to you through your own worthy efforts, money you spend for your own worthy desires, money you spend in helping others. Will you build your character while you build your fortune? This, as by now you know, is not exactly another matter. There is a strong connection between the power to make money and the power to know your own mind and fulfill your own self as a fully realized person. Again, we shall examine a technique that goes with being rich and having invincible peace of mind. So far as sharing money is concerned, you may see this technique as belonging to your future. So far as sharing other forms of wealth is concerned, this technique is yours. This technique is yours right now. Use it and make it part of you. Life proceeds according to the great law of compensation. The more you give of what you have, the more comes back to you, and it comes back greatly multiplied. He gave away 90% of his working hours. One of my distinguished students, Edward, quote, of the New England Life Insurance Company of Los Angeles, decided to help his government sell war bonds during World War II. He devoted 80% of his time to this effort, for which he received no direct compensation. In addition, he gave 10% of his time to counseling and training other life insurance men, his direct competitors. For this, he neither asked nor received compensation. He used the remaining 10% of his time to sell life insurance on his own account. One might think that a man who gave away 90% of his working hours would ruin his business. Let us see. A life insurance man is considered to do pretty well if he writes $1 million worth of insurance in a year. During the first 3 months of 1 year, Edward wrote more than $1.5 million worth. Most of this was written in his own office, on the lives of men who sought him out and asked him to accept their applications. They were mine who remembered him in connection with the services he rendered while he was giving away 90% of his time. In giving of his time, Edward never hinted that he wanted anything in return, yet such is the law of compensation that a return is inevitable. You may wish to look at it this way. Every time you share your blessings with another, you become his creditor. Eventually, the debt is paid. Somehow, debts have to be paid. They give away a philosophy and it turn manifold. One of the most valuable gifts you can give any man is the gift of direction. Show him how to gather his forces and focus them the way he wants to go. And literally, you do more for him than if you handed him $1 million. If you handed them, if you handed him $1 million, Andrew gave away multiple millions for the purpose of funding free libraries, hoping thus to disseminate knowledge of all kinds and lift the entire knowledge level of the nation. Above and beyond this, he made available the science of personal achievement in which I have played my own part. One of the greatest rewards of my life has been to see my book, Think and Grow Rich, given away as a means of spreading the philosophy. Edward is one of those who have given away hundreds of copies. Often he gives the book to mine who, by no stretch of the imagination ever, will become prospect for life insurance. He gives the book to others because it helped him find himself. Undoubtedly, it has brought him business. Undoubtedly, it has helped many of mine to be able to afford the life insurance they need. Another student of mine moved to Oakland, California, with a total capital of less than $200. He invested half of his capital in Think and Grow Rich. He made a practice of lending the book to his neighbors, asking only that each person keep the book 1 week. At the end of that time, he would pick up the book and lend it to some other person. Later, he came to tell me that what his habit of sharing his own philosophy had done for him. When I started to learn those books of yours, he said, I had no other purpose in mind than to make friends among my neighbors by introducing them to a philosophy which has so much friendship in it. Meanwhile, I had started my machine shop with one small drill press. Very soon, some of my neighbors who had great Think and Grow Rich began to spread the news of my shop and my philosophy of giving as much as I can. When business began to pour in, I never spent a cent in advertising. I never solicited a single order from anybody. At last report, this man had $100,000 worth of equipment in his shop and had grossed more than $1 million. He said, it beats anything I ever heard of in my whole life. But you hear of it when your ear becomes attuned to the great art of giving. It is not a new idea. The great philosophers of all times have pointed out the riches we gain when we give away some of our wealth, of money, of time, of service, of unpremeditated moments of kindness, and especially of love, giving to those who help themselves. Any man noted for his many services receives endless requests for money. He knows that most of these appeals come from people who will not use the money for these necessities, let alone in any manner which helps them in their careers. He cannot hope to screen all such requests. Often it is far simpler for him to give large sums to charity or to endure foundation. Those who have worked for their money know that the virtue of money consists in its use, not in its quantity. This is equally true whether the amount be a dime or $1 million. Henry Ford once was approached by Miss Martha Berry of Martha Berry School in Geo- Georgia. Miss Berry asked for an endowment for her school, but Mr. Ford refused the request. Well, she countered, will you give us a sack of peanuts? Mr. Ford obliged by buying her a sack of raw peanuts. With the aid of her students, mountain boys and girls, Miss Berry planted and replanted the peanuts, selling the crop until he had converted the region sack into $600 in cash. She then returned to Mr. Ford and handed him the $600, saying, you see how practical we are in the use of money. Mr. Ford handed back the $600 along with some $2 million to build the fine stone buildings which now adorn the campus of Martha Berry School in Midbury, Georgia. Mr. Ford made very few gifts of this kind. Experience had taught him that all too often gifts to schools are handed by impractical people who know very little about some business methods. As long as Martha Mary lived, the Ford private car appeared on the railroad siding near her school once a year, while Mr. and Mrs. Ford paid a visit. A present-day multimillionaire Harry Crumb, who arrived in this country as a poor immigrant from Lithuania, is now a leading figure in the vast General Dynamics Corporation. Mr. Crumb has put a great deal of money into applying, which teaches aspiring young people how to handle capital. He has set up a fund of $8,000 as a good many colleges. And this money is invested each year by the senior economics class. When the class makes a profit, its members share the surplus, and the fund is passed on intact to the next class. Wealth creates wealth. A large sum of money in the hands of one generally does not create as much wealth as does money which circulates, provided that those who handle its circulation are interested in creating wealth. A man's happiness and peace of mind depend on his sharing all kinds of wealth. Business relations cannot properly be described as a relationship of love between buyer and seller. Yet, when the idea of service to one's fellow man comes into the relationship, much that is profitable to both parties also enters in. A little bit of myself, said Henry Ford, goes into every automobile that rolls off our assembly lines, and I think of every automobile we sell, not in terms of the profit it yields us, but in terms of the useful service it may render the purchaser. Thomas Edison said, I never perfected an invention that I did not think about in terms of the service it might give others. The idea that the business should give its customers more than a product for the price is not new, and history proves it creates both good businesses and good customers. Good relations between an industrial employer and his employees, however, are not very old as history goes. This is natural enough when we consider that enterprises which employ people by the thousand have not been with us more than a few generations. They are a great way for the owner of the business to make money, and unfortunately, many labor force has been badly treated in the process. In past years, we had our own era of those industrial parades who never thought of sharing with their employees the wealth that their employees helped to create. Well, they made a great show of their money in New York, Newport, or Palm Beach. Those men would have sneered at the idea that a society needs a large number of well-paid people who are able to buy more goods and lead better lives. Millionaires are far more numerous today. More than 5,000 new millionaires have so declared themselves on their tax returns in the last decade. Also, as I have mentioned, today's millionaires do not seem to want the notice that rich men used to require. Most of my readers will not recognize the names of some of the present-day millionaires and multimillionaires I have cited. Nor do today's moneyed men seem anxious to form a definite class to which the poor may be aspire. I quote Arthur Dashiell, who made so much money in building and selling mobile homes. It's easier to get ahead than it was 15 or 40 years ago. Look at the population growth and tremendous rise in personal income. This country is just loaded with opportunities. So it is, and many of the opportunities would not exist if wealth were not better distributed than it used to be. Employers have seen the value to themselves. to their people and to society of taking workers into partnership with the industry. A capitalist society proves over and over that it is the best way to create maximum widespread wealth. A victory of the science of personal achievement, the RG Latourneux Company is a large employer. Some years ago, I received a phone call from a former student who had become one of its executives. Please come to see us immediately, he said. We have a difficulty which only you can handle. When I arrived at the plant, I learned that communi- communistic influences had entered in the guise of a labor union. The company wanted help in immu- immuni- im- immunizing its employees against this ism, knowing that if the crisis could be surmounted, the man who realized which way of life was best for them. They asked me my fee. Perhaps there will be no fee, I replied. Give me freedom to act, and if I cannot overcome your trouble, then there will be no charge. If I succeed in eliminating the communistic influences, I will tell you later what my charge will be. The deal was closed on that basis. I set up a plot in the plant and I stayed on duty day and night. The basic trouble was twofold. The man did not realize first how the company returns to them part of the wealth they created, and also few individuals had any idea of their own power to take their own abilities and multiply them through the exercise of a positive mental attitude. Fear of poverty and other crippling fears run rampant among them. Belief in wealth and happiness, and each man's power to win his own wealth and create his own happiness had been pushed aside by negative thinking. Given this ground in which to sow their seeds of disorder, the communist mandate organizers were able to make those minds believe that their future should be in the hands of others, that they should reduce themselves to cogs in a kind of economic machine, that indeed it was wrongful a mind of faith and ambition to rise where a negative-minded mind might not follow. In combating the communists, I never mentioned them. Rather, I taught the science of personal achievement, and that was all I needed to teach. In a short time, employees saw how much greatness each man has within his own mind, a greatness nobody else can or should handle for him. They saw that what it really means to work and the rewards work brings to a man who has some goal besides 3 meals a day and really wants to achieve his ambition. They came to see that the rich men of their time owned no natural power which they themselves did not own, and all they had to do was to find their powers for prosperity and use them. I succeeded when I named my compensation. I received it immediately. 8 months later, the company increased my fee. Thus it goes when one realized that wealth is not something you grab from another, it is something you build for yourself out of service to others, sparked and enhanced by your own positive, joyful inward drive. This is true wealth and parts of peace of mind. I do not know how many of those men become rich, but I know they had reason to bear in mind the true picture of wealth and share it with others. Sharing the wealth in your own home, you can tell a great deal about a man by what goes on in his home. Men who are successful in living, not merely in mastering the mechanics of some trade, generally maintain homes in which no one person has to be boss and there is true love and true sharing. I've been in the homes of rich men whose wives tried to beg them for money enough to buy needed articles of clothing. I've been in homes of poor mine in which every purchase had to be discussed unless it leave no money for food. And a poor home was the happier because of its atmosphere of sharing, even though the lack of money was sadly felt. I have at times been asked to give marriage counseling, and at times I have recommended that a marriage be broken. There are many reasons for such a recommendation, and I assure you the reasons are not trifling. I've noticed in such cases that lack of ability to share invariably shows itself. Let non-sharing take hold at any level, in any aspect of married life, and it leads to other troubles. You're going to make money, and when you do, make sure that your wife has a fund of her own to spend as she wishes. It will not be her fund in the sense that is sacrosanct. For if you meet financial misfortune, she will share this as well in a good and loving marriage. It will be her money in the sense of that it is your recognition of your wife as a person in her own right, your partner, not your servant. I'm informed that much of the chatter that goes on in beauty parlors has to do with the clever ways in which women get money out of their husbands. Not a few must resort to slipping a few dollars out of his pocket while he sleeps. Others invent charities or dream up school expenses for the children. Apparently, many a woman is literally forced into such tactics if she is to maintain a decent home, for her husband shows no willingness to shell out more than enough for a mere subsistence, if that. On the other hand, many a woman in the sanctity of hair drying role reveals she has lost her grocery of tolerance in playing mahjong or in some similar pursuit, and she cannot admit this to her husband. The sum lost is rarely large, and the mahjong is not wicked. It is the lack of frankness with her husband that is the truly damaging condition. If you knew how angry my husband can get, such a woman often says, you know why I cannot tell him. So it takes two to create the bad situation. Add to this the fact that many husbands never tell their wives how much they earn or how much they may spend on drinks or how much they lose at poker. By and large, when a man shows he is willing to share, a woman, her nature is eager to share lovingly with him. High on the list of information a man should share with his wife is the knowledge of how much money he makes and how he acquires his money. Women generally stay at home or close to home, while a man is out somewhere earning money. When a man comes to home from his job, a woman likes him to bring with him some of the outside world. It is a smart man who sees to it that his wife gets a blow-by-blow description of how he does, and where he spends his time without her having to ask this information. There are sexual overtones in this, for a wife may work up jealousy for no reason, especially if a man has a job which does not keep him constantly at a desk or a bench within set of others. Share and you have a marriage. Avoid sharing, and you might as well be living alone. Think back upon the nine basic motives we discussed in the previous chapter to refresh your memory. There are seven positive motives: love, sex, material gain, self-preservation, freedom from body and mind, self-expression, perpetuation of life after death, and two negative motives: anger and revenge, and fear. It's been said that the first three basic motives, love, sex, and money, practically rule the world. I would not say this statement is entirely true, but there is a great deal of truth in it. A man who has not truly shared all of his life with a woman of his choice cannot know the magic of sex and love in their most sublime combination. But when the mind lives with these motives, he often connects them like a mighty animal to the third. He makes more and more money so that he may share more and more of life's abundance with his wife. No part of your existence can be lived separately from all the other parts. When you're successful in one area, it helps you to be successful in all other areas. Most especially, when you have peace of mind at home and you can count on having peace of mind everywhere. I'll tell a little story about, or perhaps on myself. There was a time in my life when changing a flat tire upset me completely. Now, if a flat occurs on one of my long drives across the wide open parts of our country, I change the tire and I'm not in the least upset. In former years, I had more muscle, but in former years, I did not drive with the woman of my choice beside me as I do today. Everyone has something to share and gains by sharing it. When a stranger stops you in the street and asks directions, you share your knowledge when you tell them. You do not have to be rich in money in order to do this. If you are really rich in human candies, you will give the stranger a very careful explanation, or perhaps walk to the next corner with him and point out the way. The poorest of us has much to share. In some ways, a poor man has as much to share as does a rich man. Certainly, it is so with love and with kindness. I shall suggest the three general ways of sharing which are available to almost anybody. You may not make use of the particular instances used as examples, but the list will serve to open your mind to the many possibilities of sharing more than money. First, share your special skills or knowledge. Many of us possess some special skill or knowledge which helps us earn money. We are used to selling our skill. Now look for a way to give that skill without thought of gain. A much needed clubhouse for boys was built in the slum section of a large city. The basic construction costs were provided by a large foundation, but the clubhouse never would have gotten started were it not for those who give their skills. A lawyer volunteered his services in drawing up the incorporation papers and other necessary documents. A carpenter installed locker room partitions. A painter gave his own services and also supervised the volunteer crew, which painted the entire interior in cheerful colors. A machine installed a concrete ramp at one entrance so that physically handicapped boys could make their way in. Second, share by filling a gap where you see one. Mr. A loaned his lawnmower to his new neighbor, Mr. B, who had not had time to equip it himself. This was the beginning of excellent good neighbor relations between the two families, but for a while it seemed as though matters were going the other way. After Mr. B had trimmed his lawn, he returned the lawnmower with a big chip in one blade. Noticing this, Mr. A remarked dip diplomatically that Mr. B must have some rocks hidden in the grass, which chipped the blade. The new neighbor said gruffly that the blade had been chipped when he had been offered the use of a lawnmower and walked away. Since the chip was fresh and shiny, this hardly could have been so. Mr. A said nothing more. However, he limited his contacts with his new neighbor to mere nods if he met him in the streets. One day, Mr. B came around with a brand new lawnmower and handed it to Mr. A. I want you to have this, Mr. B said. You see, I knew I'd broken that blade, but I couldn't afford to have it fixed right then. I guess I should have said so, but well, I didn't. Now things have turned out all right, and I want to do more than merely have the blade fixed. Thus is money or non-money debt returned with interest. Far more valuable than the lawnmower itself. However, was the atmosphere of cordiality, cordiality with the two families formed from then on. Share recognition and appreciation. Notice how often you're recognized as being in a certain role. For example, the role of a customer. And so you are treated in a certain way. Now turn around the situation and recognize the other person. You will find it is a limitless form of sharing. For example, you may stop your car at a filling station on a hot day. The attendant rushes up, mopping his brow, anxious to give you prompt service. You recognize him as a person who has his own problems and say, take it easy, it's too hot to hurry. He will remember you the next time you drive in. Say your employer or foreman. One of your man does exceptionally good work. Many an employer or foreman would observe that the man is paid to do a good job. So what? A weather supervisor will make a point of telling a worker that his good performance has been noticed. When a person does a good job, he is favorably disposed toward anyone who gives him recognition. Furthermore, he will try thereafter to keep his work up to a high standard. He will offer many kindness. He will perform many of free service, and in many cases, you will see no return. Bear in mind, there is always return within yourself. For when you give of yourself, you make yourself bigger. And remember the law of compensation, which always works in your favor when you arrange it so. We shall look more deeply into wonders of compensation later on. Look for ways to share your wealth. Never ask, what's wealth? In sharing, you will find you are wealthier than you think. Share more than money, and when you have plenty of money, you will be more closely attuned to human needs, and your money will give a that added benefit to those who share it. The supreme secret is like a half-hidden treasure you may pass 100 times a day without noticing, yet you see it from the corner of your eye. Checking on chapter 6. The more you give, the more comes back to you. Even a man who gave away 90% of his working time became richer thereby. When you share your blessing with another, you become his creditor and eventually the debt is paid. You also can share the reaction in the form of a philosophy which leads to peace of mind and great wealth. Giving to those who help themselves is a highly constructive kind of giving. Wealth creates wealth. When a buying and selling relationship contains the idea of service to one's fellow man, both sides benefit. Many early industrial employers took all they could from their employees and returned as little as possible. Today, wealth is more widespread, and these help create more opportunities. A millionaire no longer attempts to make a great display of wealth. There are increasing numbers of millionaires, and rich men no longer see themselves as a class part. As you create your own wealth, you can create your own happiness. Many people who work for others do not realize the extent to which they share the wealth they create. Now, nor how they can create endless wealth in their own lives through the power of positive mental attitude. Rich men have no natural powers denied to poor men. Every man carries his greatness within his own mind, and it is he himself, and not an outside power, who is the only one who can bring forth his greatness. Sharing the wealth in your own home. Women who are successful in living generally maintain love and sharing in their own homes. When couples do not share, other troubles arise. When a man shows he is willing to share, a woman is eager to share with him. Three basic motives, love, sex, and money, are set practically to rule the world. And this can be seen in many cases. No part of your life can be lived separately from the other parts. Everyone has something to share. You can share knowledge. You can share love and kindness. No matter how poor you may be, almost anyone can share in three areas which offer themselves over and over. You can share your special skills or knowledge. You can share by filling a gap when you see one. You can share recognition and appreciation of others and the work they do. OK，下个条啊，以上就是本书第6章的全部内容。下一次我们接着阅读第7章，How to develop your own healthy ego。好，下次再见。